Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today you're going to be taking an in-depth look at my Bioactive cave gecko enclosure. Nymeria is my cave gecko and she's a Chinese cave gecko. I always just shorten it to cave gecko, but I should say Chinese cave gecko. I'm going to include her species, like her specific species, right here. I can't pronounce it, not even going to try. I have gotten some criticism or questions in the past because there are different species of Chinese cave gecko, so I want to be very clear that Nymeria is this species right here and not any of the others that you may see. The reason that is important is because there are going to be some differences in how you care for one species versus another. The same goes for if you're going to care for an East Indian leopard gecko, which is Eublepharis hardwicki, I believe, and then there's also the mainstream Eublepharis macellarius. So in my care videos, I actually went back and added all of their species names to the exact species that I have because it was a fair criticism. So I just want to be very clear that my Chinese cave gecko is this species right here, and this enclosure can only pertain to that species. This is not a care video. If you're interested in that, I will include it right up there, and if you're interested in what a Chinese cave gecko is, my species anyway, you can go ahead and check right there. Those are two videos I've already done, and I'll also include a playlist down below to any videos I've made about Nymeria. With all that said, her Bioactive is pretty straightforward, so I don't have any sort of preface to add like I did with Roku's, because he couldn't have live plants because he'd destroy them. She definitely has live plants, and we're going to go ahead and take a look at her enclosure now. So this is an overview of my cave gecko's Bioactive enclosure. This is what it looks like from afar. There's obviously a lot that you can't see because it's very intricate, so I'll have to get close-ups. I'm sorry if my hand is shaky in those because I have to get inside the enclosure, so I can't use a tripod. But I wanted to give an overview just so you can see what it looks like from afar. A couple things worth noting about this enclosure is that it does have bioactive substrate and a drainage layer. Now, I cut the mesh uneven so you can see it on this side but not on this side, and I was like, yeah, I'm not fixing that. So it may not be eye-appealing down here, but it doesn't really matter because it's functional. This drainage layer is hydrogen or hydro balls, and then this is Josh's Frog's ABG mix, and then I topped it with some organic topsoil just so that the chunks aren't a risk to her impaction or anything like that. I mean, obviously with loose substrate that could technically always be a risk, but the organic topsoil is very fine, so it's organic topsoil, and then it's the ABG mix, then it's a mesh layer, and then it's the hydro balls. Oh, and there's also sphagnum also on top too, but you'll see that throughout the enclosure. Alright, let's go ahead and get into the enclosure. So right here in front of me, what you see is actually a little cork round, and the cork round is there, well, there's tons of cork rounds in this enclosure, but the purpose is to provide a lot of areas to hide. Cave geckos, especially Nymeria, are super secretive, and they like to hide, even in the nighttime, which is when they're most active. I only get to see her out every once in a while. Usually she's hiding, and in fact right now she's probably hiding underneath here. But this is a cork round, and then this is a cork round that I broke in half, so it actually doesn't roll around on the bottom. There's just earth down here. This is another cork round. There's a cork round back here. There's a cork round down here, and I think that's all of them. Then this is a cork flat, and then all of the walls are filled with cork tile. So the cork tile is an 18 by 18. I think it's made by ZoomEd, and what it does is it allows Nymeria to have a lot of climbing area. Initially, it also provided darkness, but since I've gone the route of live plants, I do have a light in here. It looks super bright because it's actually daytime and the enclosure is by a window, so it's going to be a little bit brighter, but this light actually is not super bright, and as the daylight hours come to an end, that is the only thing that keeps the enclosure lit until it goes off. It's on a timer, so it comes on about 10 a.m. and it goes off around 6 or 7, so it's not a full day-night spectrum, because that light is really just for helping the plants grow, and the window is what really keeps the day-night cycle going for all the animals in this pet room. Anyway, so that's all you need to know about the cork. So there's multiple cork rounds for hiding. There's a cork flat, which she likes to hide under. It also provides plenty of climbing area, and The cork rounds are really just like, I feel like, the staple of this enclosure, and whether or not you have live plants, I really recommend offering tons and tons of hides for a cave gecko. And if you can offer lots of climbing area, like having cork tile sides, I think that's a good idea too. We'll start back down here again so I can talk about what's going on in the front of the enclosure, with the exception of the cork since we already talked about it. So over here is a calcium dish. This is just pure calcium carbonate in a dish. My Nymeria is a girl, and so I like to offer additional calcium to not only all my geckos but especially my girls, and it's that time of year for all types of geckos and reptiles. You know, it's breeding season, so this is definitely something to offer a female gecko, or any gecko really, but especially a female. Over here we have her food dish, and she is very picky about food. I actually can only feed her dubia roaches. She won't eat anything other than dubia. I don't know why, but just how she is. And I've actually, from talking to other people who have cave geckos, have found that that is pretty similar, that their cave gecko is very particular about one food item. She has some dubia in there right now, so you can see a couple of them. There's probably others back here, and I think she did eat some. She doesn't ever eat a full bowl. She eats what she wants, and then she ignores the rest. But the bowl looks nasty, but I promise you it's not. I clean it out every time I offer her food. It's just the Rapashi Calcium Plus mixed with like humidity in the enclosure. It gets kind of nasty on the bottom of the bowl, but it's not like anything gross or harmful, don't worry. Then back here is a water bowl. You can't see all of it. I'll give you a closer look later. But something that happens in her enclosure is that a lot of springtails get stuck in her water, which, you know, happens. Springtails just jump around and they get stuck in water, and they float on the water surface. So sometimes they come out, but a lot of times they just stay in the water. Oh, speaking of springtails, this enclosure is bioactive because it has the springtails and dwarf tropical white isopods in the enclosure, so they are the cleanup crew. I always forget to mention that when I mention bioactives, but yeah, her enclosure is bioactive because it has live plants in the substrate as well as having the cleanup crew. So when Nymeria was rehomed to me last June, I think it was actually maybe even just the beginning of July, she came to me with an already built enclosure, and it wasn't, like, in my mind ideal, so I wanted to change it up. And this came with it, and it's the only thing I really kept because she likes to poop in it. It's her favorite spot to poop. Who am I to say she should no longer have somewhere she likes to poop? So I kept it in her enclosure, and any enclosures that I've made since then, like, she's had a couple different enclosures to see, you know, what I can really get her to like, and this has been the most recent one, obviously, but she always poops in that no matter what enclosure she's in, so of course I left it there for her. Plus it has humidity in it, you know, extra humidity if she wants it, and if she wants to poop, there's her spot. So I think that addresses everything except the live plants. So down here is a creeping Charlie. I'll include the species name right here on the screen. Back there is a golden pothos. I'll include the species name on the screen. So this plant over here is actually a bromeliad, and I'll include the species name right here on the screen. This is relatively new to the enclosure. I actually just purchased 2 of them from Josh's Frogs. I'm kind of experimenting with different plants to see if I can get different plants to live. I have one in a crested gecko enclosure I just built, and then I put this one in here. I know that they require like a different type of care because they are not a plant that is root bound. So while everything else in this enclosure is permanent and probably not going to change anytime soon, this might, but this is just an experiment. I wanted to see how it would do. So that is the entire enclosure, and I'll give you some close-ups here in a minute, but again, let's go right through it. We have 3 cork tile walls. We have the bioactive substrate, which is the ABG mix from Josh's Frogs, as well as the drainage layer, which is hydroton or hydro balls, and we have the top layer, which is organic topsoil. We have multiple pieces of cork, including cork rounds and cork flat. We have her water dish, her food dish, and a calcium dish. We have her humid hide and also her toilet. And we have some creeping Charlie, some golden pothos, and also the bromeliad. Now let's talk about the technology in this enclosure. So cave geckos thrive at room temperature, and I put air quotes around that you can't see, so room temperature. The reason I said room temperature in air quotes is because they thrive in a temperature that is like between 70 and 80 degrees, which some people's room temperature is cooler than that and some is hotter, so it depends where you live and how you like your bedroom or your pet room, whatever. But the pet room is always around 75. Sometimes in the winter it can dip down to 69, and that's a little bit on the cool end of how I'd like the enclosure, so there is a heat mat. and it doesn't come through like super strong through the cork tile. So if you're trying to like use this for an animal that needs something like in the 90s, I would not recommend using cork tile. But fortunately, the heater comes through the cork enough that it reaches about 78 degrees. So I'm able to, you know, use a thermostat with that and keep it about 78 right in that area. Also along the lines of technology, we have a white LED light above the enclosure that helps the plants grow. The plants have been in here for over a month, all except for the bromeliad. The pothos and the creeping Charlie have been in here for a while, and they are growing. The creeping Charlie is doing great, the pothos is doing great, and I really can't wait for the pothos to like branch out over the enclosure more and really offer a lot of coverage, especially like the higher up that the enclosure goes. I'm really excited for that. So I mean, looking on this enclosure 6 months from now, a year from now, it's hopefully going to look quite different and quite a bit more green. But that's the goal with bioactives. You start out with something that might, you know, take a lot of time to look really great. So that's the enclosure. I'm going to give you guys some close-ups and then we're going to hit to the outro. So I'm actually filming this close-up a day later. If you hear some noises in the background, it's the gutters being replaced at the house. I was going to film close-ups on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, but we had work on the house done, so I couldn't, and I also had a funeral to go to. So now I'm filming the close-ups and it's Friday, the day of posting. So I hope that's not a problem for you. I cleaned out the water bowl yesterday and look at that. Springtails galore. I don't know why they all flock, but that's what they do. So there's a close-up of her Exoterra. Here is the golden pothos. Here is the bromeliad. Here is the creeping Charlie. As you can see, there's like one little gray leaf, but there's like new sprouts all the time. It's doing great. Here's her food from last night, which of course she neglected. Here you can see just how many hides she actually has. Here's another. This is hollow all the way through, like a little bridge. That's another hide. This she can actually fit in those two outlets as well as this larger one over here, and you can see it's like balanced, so it's not sitting on top of her cork flat, it's actually balanced, and she's so lightweight that's not going anywhere, you don't have to worry. But it just offers some more climbing space. And then there's another cork round back there that's holding up her cork flat. I assume she's underneath here right now. I do not want to bother her. It's the middle of the day, and I'm really trying to leave her alone as much as possible because I want her to eat her food. And then again, here's calcium. As you can see, there's a bunch of sphagnum and leaf litter around, which I forgot to mention. Leaf litter is another core component of having a bioactive. But yeah, it's a pretty cool enclosure, if I don't mind myself saying, with a lot of little dark spaces for her to hide and feel safe. And hopefully the next time you guys get a chance to see her, she'll be back to eating normally and back to being her normal self. But winter and springtime are just like the worst times to have reptiles, because in winter everyone's broodmating, and in springtime everyone is not eating because they're all trying to lay eggs and trying to mate, and it's just annoying. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Sorry you didn't get to see Nymeria too much. She has been particularly grouchy and not really great about eating because it's that time of year, and she just happens to be a lady gecko, and lady geckos this time of year are so much like exhaustion. Okay, I'm gonna make a video all about ovulation, egg laying, and all the problems that can go wrong with it, because I've had quite the experience this year with my leopard geckos, and holy cow. So I feel like it's the best time to make that video is this time of year because it's very pertinent. So sorry I didn't get to see Nymeria that much, but it's just what it is. If you have any questions about her bioactive setup, please leave the questions down below. I'm very happy to answer them. I ask that you subscribe and hit the notification bell because I will be posting more bioactive enclosure tours, including one of my red-eyed crocodile skink Fugaku. I actually already posted one, but I made some changes to it that I like better, and so I figured I would refilm the video and share it again because I'm very anal about like making sure everything is like the most recent I could possibly post on my channel. So if you're interested in seeing that a second time, a little bit different than the first time, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. You can also check us out on social media and stuff, but I've been pretty frustrated with Instagram lately, so I'm not posting as much on there. I'm very active on Instagram, but if you don't want Game of Thrones spoilers, I recommend not following me. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this one, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!